The night air in Paris was crisp, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you shiver. Inside a dimly lit tavern, a group of traveling merchants huddled around a flickering candle, their faces cast in shadows. They were discussing a topic that had been on their minds for days: the faithfulness of their wives back home. Bernabò, a Genoese merchant with a rugged, weathered face, leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. "My wife, Zinevra, is a saint," he declared, his voice steady and confident. "She would never betray me." His words were met with a chorus of skeptical chuckles. Ambruogiuolo, a shrewd and sly merchant from Florence, raised an eyebrow and leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Oh, really? I've heard stories of wives who are as faithful as dogs and as deceitful as foxes. I bet you 1,000 gold florins that I can bed your wife." The room fell silent. Bernabò's face flushed with anger. "You dare wager such a sum on the faith of my wife? You must be mad." Ambruogiuolo grinned, unfazed. 1,000 gold florins, Bernabò. If I win, you'll know the truth. If I lose, I'll pay you the gold and admit defeat. What do you say?" Bernabò's pride was stung. He couldn't let this challenge go unanswered. "Very well," he said, his voice tight. "But if you fail, you'll owe me more than just gold. You'll owe me your life." The bet was sealed with a handshake, and Ambruogiuolo set his plan in motion. He traveled to Genoa, where he bribed a poor woman in Bernabò's household to help him. She hid him in a chest and smuggled him into Zinevra's bedroom. Under the cover of night, Ambruogiuolo emerged and began his scheme. He found Zinevra asleep, her beauty undiminished by the darkness. He memorized the layout of the room, stole several of her intimate possessions, and even noticed a mole under her left breast, a mark that would serve as proof of his success. With his evidence in hand, Ambruogiuolo returned to Paris and confronted Bernabò. The merchant's face turned red with rage. He ordered his servant to travel to Genoa and kill Zinevra. But the servant, moved by pity, secretly released her, warning her to flee. Zinevra, now disguised as a young man named Cicurano, set out on a journey that would take her far from home. She eventually found herself in Alexandria, where she became a serving boy to the Sultan. Over time, she earned his trust and favor. 6 years passed, and fortune once again played its unpredictable hand. The Sultan sent Cicurano to oversee a grand fair of merchants in Acre. There, she encountered Ambruogiuolo and the items that belonged to her. When she asked about them, he boasted about his trickery, not knowing that the young man before him was the very woman he had betrayed. Zinevra saw her chance. She befriended Ambruogiuolo, convinced him to set up business in Alexandria, and arranged for him to tell his story to the Sultan. She then summoned Bernabò to Alexandria, bringing the two men face to face before the Sultan. Ambruogiuolo, forced to recount his deceit, was stunned when Cicurano revealed her true identity. Bernabò, overcome with guilt and shame, fell to his knees. Zinevra, showing mercy, begged the Sultan to spare her husband, but for Ambruogiuolo there was no such mercy. He was tied to a pole, smeared with honey, and left to the mercy of the elements, a grim testimony to his wickedness. Zinevra and Bernabò, their bond stronger than ever, returned to Genoa. Their story was a tale of cunning, luck, and the unpredictable nature of fortune. But it was also a reminder that, in a world where divine providence seemed absent, it was often the resourceful and the clever who prevailed. In the world of Boccaccio's Decameron, love and desire take many forms, sometimes leading to comedic and sometimes to tragic outcomes. The stories told by the 10 young people highlight the complexities of human relationships and the often harsh realities of life in medieval Italy. One of the most memorable characters is Madonna Filippa, a woman caught in bed with her lover. Her husband takes her to court, demanding she be put to death for her infidelity, but Madonna Filippa is not one to back down. She defends herself brilliantly, arguing that the law is unjust because it was made by men without considering women's needs. She points out that she has always satisfied her husband's desires, so why should she let her own desires go to waste? The court agrees with her and modifies the law, showing that in this merchant society, a woman's sexuality is her own to control, as long as her husband's needs are met. However, not all stories end so happily. The tale of Gismonda, a young princess, is a stark contrast. Her father, Tancredi, is overly protective and refuses to arrange a second marriage for her. Gismonda, determined to find love, takes a lover named Giscardo. When her father discovers their affair, he has Giscardo killed and sends Gismonda her lover's heart in a golden chalice. Devastated, Gismonda poisons herself, ending the story in tragedy. Despite the noble tone of her defiance, the story feels more like melodrama than tragedy, and it leaves the readers, and even the storytellers, feeling uneasy. On the lighter side, the story of Caterina and Rixardo shows how love can sometimes lead to a happy ending. Caterina convinces her parents to let her sleep on a balcony to listen to the nightingale. Rixardo joins her, and they make love. When her father discovers them the next morning, he is initially angry, but, seeing that Rixardo is rich and noble, decides to have them marry. This story, with its romantic and comic elements, is a perfect antidote to the dark tale of Gismonda. Days 7 and 8 of the Decameron focus on deception and trickery. These stories often involve women outsmarting their husbands, using their wit and cunning to achieve their desires. For example, one wife hides her lover in a barrel and tricks her husband into cleaning it, allowing her to have her way while he works. These tales are usually told with humor, and the readers often side with the women, who are cleverly navigating a patriarchal society. However, the tone shifts on day 8, where the stories become more cynical and dark. Deception is no longer just a tool for love or self-preservation, but a means of punishment and revenge. One story tells of a scholar forced to stand in a freezing garden, while the woman he loves and her lover mock him. He later exacts a cruel revenge, showing that the line between comedy and tragedy is thin. The final day of the Decameron is dedicated to stories of liberality and magnanimity, an attempt to restore harmony and balance. These tales show characters who are generous and unselfish, often inspiring others to act similarly. However, even these stories have a darker side. One tells of Nathan, who is so generous that he offers his life to a jealous Mithridates, who had planned to kill him. Mithridates, moved by Nathan's magnanimity, spares him, but the story still highlights the dangers of competitive generosity. The last story, told by Dionio, is the most unsettling. Griselda, a peasant girl, marries a marquis, but is subjected to a series of cruel tests to prove her obedience. She remains patient and submissive, even when her children are taken away, and she is sent back to her father in rags. The marquis, satisfied with her constancy, reveals that her children are alive and declares her the perfect wife. This story, while meant to be a lesson in obedience, is also a painful reminder of the harsh realities of medieval life and the lack of agency women often face. Through these stories, Boccaccio explores the complexities of human nature, the power of desire, and the often delicate balance between comedy and tragedy. The Decameron is not just a collection of tales, but a reflection on the human condition, showing that life is full of both joy and sorrow. In the world of Geoffrey Chaucer, life was a series of contradictions and complexities. Born in London around 1343, Chaucer grew up in a time of great upheaval. The Black Death, a devastating plague that swept through Europe, killed a large portion of the population, leaving behind a world that was both scarred and changing. Despite the tragedy, Chaucer's family moved to Southampton in 1347, where his father John worked as a tax collector. This move likely saved the family from the worst of the plague, which hit London hard the following year. Chaucer's early life was marked by a mix of privilege and practicality. His father was a successful wine merchant and served the royal court, which provided young Geoffrey with a glimpse into the world of the nobility. His mother, Agnes, came from a family of property-owning gentry, which added to the family's status. Chaucer was sent to school at St. Paul's Almonry in 1349, where he began his education. But his real education in the ways of the world came when he became a page in the household of Elizabeth, the Countess of Ulster, who later married Lionel, the third son of King Edward III. As a page, Chaucer learned the manners and customs of the aristocracy, but he never fully belonged to that world. He was a bridge between the merchant class and the nobility, a position that would later influence his writing. Chaucer's ability to navigate both worlds gave him a unique perspective on the society around him. He saw the grandeur and the flaws, the virtues and the vices, and he would later pour these observations into his poetry. Chaucer's life was not without its challenges. The Black Death returned in less severe waves, and the social and economic landscape was constantly shifting. The labor shortages caused by the plague led to higher wages and more freedom for workers, but it also created tension and unrest. In 1381, the peasants' revolt shook London, and Chaucer, who was living in the city, must have witnessed the chaos firsthand. Despite the turmoil, Chaucer continued to serve the crown, holding various positions such as a customs collector and a diplomat. Chaucer's personal life was also complex. He married Philippa Rote, who was the sister of John of Gaunt's future wife. Their marriage was likely arranged, and they had at least 2 children. Chaucer's relationship with John of Gaunt, one of the most powerful men in England, was significant. Gaunt was a patron of the arts, and likely supported Chaucer's literary endeavors. However, Chaucer's loyalty to Gaunt also put him in a precarious position when Gaunt's son, Henry Bolingbroke, overthrew King Richard II and took the throne as Henry IV. Remarkably, Chaucer managed to maintain his standing under the new king. Throughout his life, Chaucer was both a public servant and a poet. He traveled extensively on diplomatic missions, which exposed him to the rich cultural and literary traditions of Europe. These experiences influenced his writing, and he began to develop a style that was uniquely his own. In his works, Chaucer blended the highfalutin and language of courtly love with the earthy, realistic language of everyday people. This blend of the refined and the vernacular would become a hallmark of his poetry. Chaucer's most famous work, The Canterbury Tales, is a collection of stories told by a group of pilgrims traveling to the shrine of Thomas Becket in Canterbury. The pilgrims come from all walks of life, from the noble knight to the bawdy wife of Bath, and each brings a unique perspective to the journey. Chaucer's genius lies in his ability to capture the diversity of human experience and to present it with both humor and empathy. Through the tales, Chaucer explores themes of love, morality, and human nature, but he does so in a way that is accessible and relatable. In the end, Chaucer's life was a testament to the idea that even in a world filled with uncertainty and change, there is value in understanding and appreciating the human condition. His work continues to resonate because it speaks to the complexities of life and the enduring power of storytelling. Chaucer was a man of many talents and roles. He traveled with the Duchess's entourage, learned several languages, and even participated in the activities of the nobility. He met John of Gaunt, who would become his lifelong friend and patron. At a young age, Chaucer was trained as a soldier and sent to France during the 100 Years' War. He was captured but later ransomed by the king. After his return, Chaucer's activities for the next 6 years are a bit of a mystery. Some say he studied law in London, where he once got into trouble for beating a friar. Whether this is true is uncertain, but it was a violent era. Chaucer's family had its share of drama too. His father was kidnapped, and his maternal grandfather was murdered. In 1366, Chaucer's father died, and around the same time, Chaucer married Philippa de Rote, a lady-in-waiting to the queen. Some scholars speculate that Philippa might have had a relationship with John of Gaunt, but there isn't much evidence to support this. Chaucer and Philippa often had to be apart due to their duties, but there is no indication that they were unhappy. Chaucer became a valet to the king in 1367, and quickly rose in the royal household. He went on important missions to Flanders, Spain, and Italy. He was skilled at diplomacy, and managed to secure a trade pact with Genoa and a loan from the House of Bardi for the king. These missions were challenging, especially since the king had defaulted on debts to Bardi before, causing the bank to struggle. When Edward III died in 1377, his grandson, Richard II, became king. These were turbulent times. The Western Schism began in 1378, and in 1381, the Peasants' Revolt erupted. The rebels stormed through London, and Chaucer's house at Aldgate was right in their path. Chaucer wisely stayed out of sight, and the revolt ended when King Richard II promised to address the peasants' grievances. In 1380, Chaucer faced a lawsuit for a charge of raptus, which is a bit like rape. The details are unclear, but some think he might have had an affair with Cecily Champagne, who then sued him for a settlement. This was a tricky situation, but Chaucer managed to move past it. Chaucer lost his customs job and royal favor for a while when John of Gaunt was away fighting in Spain. But he used this time to start writing the Canterbury Tales. He also served as a justice of the peace and was later a member of Parliament. His wife, Philippa, likely died in 1387. In 1389, with John of Gaunt's return, Chaucer was appointed to a demanding position as the master of the king's works, responsible for building and repair projects. He resigned in 1391, after being robbed several times. Despite these challenges, Chaucer continued to enjoy royal favor, even when Richard II was deposed by Henry IV in 1399. Chaucer's literary works were groundbreaking. He wrote in Middle English, a language that was becoming more prominent. His early poetry was influenced by French courtly romances, but he also read Latin and Italian works, especially those of Virgil, Ovid, Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. Chaucer's Troilus and Chryside, written between 1380 and 1385, is considered his masterpiece. It's a complex tale of love, betrayal, and philosophical reflection. The narrator of Troilus and Chryside is a key part of the story. He claims to be translating from a fictional author, which allows him to distance himself from the text and offer his own thoughts. He often expresses his deep affection for Chryside and his disappointment at her actions. This adds layers to the story, making it more than just a simple romance. Chaucer's portrayal of Chryside is particularly nuanced. She is a complex character, influenced by her own fears, vanity, and the opinions of others. Her relationship with Troilus develops gradually, and she is torn between her feelings and her sense of duty. Troilus, on the other hand, is more straightforward in his love, which makes Chryside's eventual betrayal all the more poignant. Chaucer's ability to blend different literary traditions and create a rich, multi-dimensional narrative set the stage for future English literature. His work continues to be celebrated for its depth and insight into human nature. In the end, the story of Arcite and Palamon unfolds like a grand tapestry, woven with threads of love, rivalry, and the unpredictable whims of fate. After their fierce battle in the forest, Theseus, the ruler of Athens, comes upon them. Instead of punishing them, he decides to settle their quarrel through a grand tournament. The winner will win the hand of Emily, the fair maiden they both love. The tournament is a spectacle of chivalry and valor, with knights from all over gathering to witness the contest. Arcite and Palamon, each determined to prove their worth, prepare for the battle with a mix of dread and hope. The day of the tournament arrives, and the arena is filled with the cheers of the crowd. The knights charge at each other, their lances clashing with the force of thunder. The battle is intense, with both Arcite and Palamon showing incredible skill and bravery. In the end, it is Arcite who emerges victorious, having knocked Palamon from his horse. The crowd cheers, and Emily, though torn by the conflict, is relieved that the contest is over. But just as Arcite is about to claim his prize, a strange and tragic twist of fate occurs. As he is riding in triumph, his horse stumbles, and Arcite is thrown to the ground, severely injured. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, Arcite dies from his wounds. In his final moments, Arcite forgives Palamon and asks Emily to marry him, believing that Palamon will treat her with the honor and love she deserves. Emily, moved by Arcite's nobility, agrees. Palamon, though still grieving, accepts the outcome and marries Emily, and the two live together in a union of love and respect. The Knight's Tale, with its blend of chivalric romance and philosophical musings, leaves us with a bittersweet reflection on the nature of love and fate. It shows us that sometimes even the best laid plans and the purest of hearts can be undone by the unpredictable forces of the world. But it also teaches us that in the face of such uncertainty, we can still find moments of grace and beauty, and that true love can endure even the harshest of trials. As the pilgrims continue their journey to Canterbury, the tales they tell and the conversations they have are a testament to the rich and varied tapestry of human experience. Each story, like the Knight's Tale, offers a glimpse into the complexities of life, where love, honor, and fortune weave together in ways that are both tragic and beautiful. And as the pilgrimage draws to a close, the readers are left to ponder the deeper truths that lie within these tales, pondering the questions of what it means to be human and how we navigate the often chaotic world around us.